In a forgotten valley, nestled between rolling hills that seemed to touch the soft underbelly of the clouds, there lay a small patch of land belonging to a young farmer named Ethan. The land itself was unremarkable, a stubborn parcel of earth that yielded its bounty only with great reluctance. Here, Ethan lived with his aging father Thomas and their dog Bruno, a loyal creature whose ancestry was as mixed and humble as the soil they tilled. Their existence was a tapestry woven with threads of poverty, yet colored brightly with love and contentment. Their home was a testament to their simple life, a small house sculpted from the very earth it stood upon. Its walls were a mixture of sun-baked clay and straw, cool in the summer heat and fragrant with the scent of the fields after a rain. The roof, a thick thatch of reeds, rustled in the wind, whispering secrets of the seasons. Their worldly wealth consisted of a handful of scrawny chickens that scratched for insects in the dusty yard, and a small rectangular cornfield. This field was the center of their universe. They charted their days by its needs, from the planting of the seed in spring to the harvest of the golden ears in late autumn. Every evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and rose, father and son would sit on the worn wooden step of their home to pray. The ritual was as constant as the setting sun. Thomas, his face a roadmap of a long and arduous life, his hands calloused and gnarled from decades of labor, would place a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. "Son," he would say, his voice a low, gentle rumble, "the life of a poor man is not an easy one. The road is steep and often strewn with stones. But remember this, if you work with honesty in your hands and carry unwavering trust in God within your heart, He will not forsake you. He will smooth the stones and open a path where there seems to be none." Ethan, with the earnestness of youth, absorbed these words as a thirsty field absorbs the rain. They were the bedrock of his character, the compass for his soul. He looked at his father's serene face etched with a peace that defied their meager circumstances, and he believed. In the quiet moments while hoeing the corn or scattering feed for the chickens, he would dream. His dreams were not of palaces or riches for their own sake, but of a day when he might steward a plot of land so fertile and vast that its abundance could be shared. He dreamed of building a granary that would never be empty, a place where any hungry soul could find sustenance. In all his aspirations, the core promise remained, to help others and to never ever forget the God who gave him life. Bruno, their dog, was far more than a pet. He was the silent, watchful third member of their family. A large, shaggy mutt with eyes that held a profound and ancient wisdom, he was their steadfast guardian. By day he would lie in the shade of the lone oak tree, one eye half open, a low growl rumbling in his chest at the first sign of a fox or hawk threatening the chickens. When Ethan and Thomas made the long walk to the market, Bruno trotted faithfully alongside them, a silent protector on the dusty road. And every night, without fail, he would curl up on the cool earth near the doorway, a furry sentinel guarding their slumber. Life was a simple, rhythmic poem of hard work, quiet faith, and an abundance of love that no treasure could buy. But the gentle rhythm of their lives was destined to be broken. The seasons of man are as cyclical as those of the earth, and the winter of Thomas's life arrived with a sudden, cruel chill. It began with a subtle tremor in his hands, a slight quaver that made it difficult to hold his tools steady. Then his voice, once so resonant, began to fade, becoming a frail and breathy whisper. Soon the strength that had defined him for so long leached from his limbs, and he could no longer rise from his cot to face the day. One afternoon, while attempting to mend a fence, Thomas collapsed. Ethan, seeing his father fall, rushed to his side. He lifted the frail, surprisingly light body onto his own young, strong back and began the slow, sorrowful walk home. Bruno padded beside them, his head low, his tail still, whining softly, as if he understood the gravity of the shadow that had fallen over their home. Ethan's evenings were no longer just for prayer but for desperate supplication. He knelt by his father's bedside, his pleas rising into the quiet darkness of the small house. "Please, God," he would whisper, tears tracing paths through the dust on his cheeks, "heal him. Give him back his strength. I will work twice as hard. I will do anything." But despite his fervent prayers, Thomas only grew weaker. The vibrant life that had once animated his features began to recede like a slow tide, leaving behind a fragile shoreline of bone and thin, papery skin. One evening, as the last light of day bled from the sky, Thomas gestured for his son to come closer. He took Ethan's hand, his grip surprisingly firm for a man so close to death's door. His eyes, though clouded, held a final, brilliant spark of clarity. "My son," he breathed, each word an effort. "Do not let your heart be troubled. My journey is ending, but yours is just beginning. Promise me you will not lose your faith." He paused, gathering a final ounce of strength. When a man loses everything he owns, his home, his wealth, his health, but keeps his faith in God, he still has everything. But the man who has everything and loses his faith has truly lost it all. With those words, a gentle sigh escaped his lips and the light in his eyes was extinguished forever. Ethan's grief was a vast, hollow ache. He buried his father beneath the sprawling branches of the big oak tree near their house, the very spot where they had so often rested together, sharing a canteen of water and dreams for the future. As Ethan packed the final layer of earth onto the grave, Bruno lay nearby, his furry body trembling, letting out soft, mournful cries that sounded almost human. It seemed that fate had not yet finished with its cruelty. Just as a sliver of acceptance began to heal the raw wound of Ethan's loss, tragedy struck again, this time with fire and fury. A dry lightning storm rolled through the valley one night. A single jagged bolt struck the thatched roof of their little house. In an instant, the dry reeds and straw ignited. The fire consumed their home with a terrifying hunger, the flames roaring into the night sky like a ravenous beast. It devoured the clay walls, the wooden furniture, the small stores of corn, and every tangible memory of their life together. Ethan stood by, helpless, as the inferno reduced his entire world to a pile of smoldering ash and blackened timbers. When the last flame died down, leaving only smoke and ruin, the strength finally deserted him. He fell to his knees in the dirt, the smell of soot and sorrow filling his lungs. A raw, guttural sob tore from Ethan's throat, a sound of such profound agony that it seemed to scorch the very air around him. "Why, God," he screamed at the unfeeling, smoke-filled sky. "You took my father. Now you take my home. Why do you take everything from me?" He buried his face in his hands, his body racked with a despair so complete it felt like a physical death. Just as he felt himself slipping into an abyss of hopelessness, a wet nose nudged his hand, followed by the rough, warm swipe of a tongue. He looked up to see Bruno, his fur singed in places, his intelligent eyes filled with a deep, unwavering concern. The dog whined and licked his hands again, a simple, profound gesture that cut through Ethan's grief. In that moment, Ethan understood. He was not completely alone. Of all that he had lost, he and his faithful dog remained. With a newfound, albeit fragile, resolve, Ethan rose to his feet. He walked to his father's grave under the oak tree, the only thing untouched by the fire. He placed a hand on the cool earth. "I will go now, Father," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "But I promise you, I will not lose my faith, and I will return one day to make this land bloom again." With nothing but the clothes on his back, a small, hastily made bag containing a single loaf of salvaged bread, and a sturdy stick for walking, Ethan turned his back on the ashes of his past. With Bruno trotting loyally at his side, he walked away, a solitary figure against the vast, indifferent landscape. Days bled into nights. They walked until their feet were sore, sleeping under the canopy of ancient trees and drinking cool, clear water from rushing rivers. They shared the small pieces of bread until it was gone, and then they subsisted on wild berries and the kindness of the earth. The bond between man and dog deepened into an unspoken language of survival and companionship. One evening, weary and footsore, they crested a hill and saw the flickering lights of a small village below. Hope, a feeling Ethan had almost forgotten, fluttered in his chest. But the village proved to be as cold and hard as the stones in its streets. The villagers were wary of strangers, their faces closed and suspicious. Doors were shut in his face. A baker shooed him away like a stray cat. No one wanted to offer work or even a crust of bread to the poor, dust-covered stranger and his dog. Dejected, hungry, and bone-tired, Ethan led Bruno away from the unwelcoming village center. On the very edge of town, where the cultivated fields gave way to the tangled woods, he found an old, abandoned house. It was dilapidated and forlorn, its windows like vacant eyes, its roof sagging in the middle. It was there that Ethan decided they would rest. Inside, he cleared a space on the dusty floor. That night, as Bruno slept curled at his feet, Ethan prayed, not with desperation, but with a quiet, resilient gratitude. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered into the gloom, "because even when I possess nothing, I still have the gift of life and the loyalty of my faithful friend. For this, I am grateful." The next morning, his prayer for work was answered. He encountered a kind, elderly man named Pedro, whose face was weathered but whose eyes shone with compassion. Pedro, seeing the honesty and desperation in the young man's face, offered him a day's work helping to clear stones from a new field. Ethan worked with a fervor that impressed the old man, and at the end of the day, Pedro paid him with a few coins and a generous portion of stew and bread. As Ethan worked for Pedro over the next few days, the villagers' curiosity grew. "Where are you staying, boy?" one of them asked gruffly. "In the old abandoned house near the woods," Ethan replied honestly. The villagers exchanged startled, fearful glances. "That house is cursed," one of them exclaimed. "It belonged to a rich, greedy man who died clutching his gold. They say his spirit still guards a hidden treasure there, and it brings ruin to anyone who dares to sleep under its roof." Ethan simply smiled, a genuine, peaceful expression that baffled them. "I have no need of treasure," he said calmly. "I only desire a place to rest and a little peace." That night, as a storm gathered outside, something strange happened within the walls of the old house. The air grew unnaturally cold, and the small candle flame Ethan had lit began to flicker violently. Bruno, who had been sleeping soundly, shot to his feet, a low, menacing growl vibrating deep in his chest, his hackles raised. Ethan's heart pounded as he stared into the darkest corner of the room, from where the chill seemed to emanate. A shadow began to coalesce, darkening and taking shape until it formed the shimmering, translucent figure of a man. It was a spirit. Its voice was like the rustling of dry leaves, ancient and filled with sorrow. "Young man," the spirit whispered, its form wavering, "why have you disturbed my rest? Do you seek my treasure as all the others have?" Ethan trembled, but his father's words echoed in his heart. He looked the apparition in its sorrowful eyes and spoke with unvarnished honesty. "No, Sir Spirit," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "I seek no treasure. I am a simple man who has lost everything. My father is gone. My home has burned to the ground. All I had in this world is now ash. I only came here seeking a humble place to rest my head, out of the wind and rain. I want nothing more from you or this house." A change came over the spirit. The agitated energy that surrounded it calmed, and its form became less menacing, more melancholic. "You are different," it sighed. "For a century, men have come to these walls, their hearts consumed by greed, their souls dark with avarice. They tried to tear this house apart, searching for my gold. But you came with nothing but sorrow, and yet you brought with you a pure heart and a resilient faith." The spirit gestured with a transparent hand. "The treasure you truly seek is not of gold or silver. It is the blessing of God, which you have never lost." With those final words, the spirit began to dissolve, fading like mist in the morning sun. In the very spot where it had stood, a section of the floorboards began to glow with a soft, golden light. The light intensified, and then, with a gentle creak, a small, iron-banded chest pushed its way up from the packed earth beneath the floor. Stunned, Ethan approached it. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, were old gold coins, shimmering jewels, and intricate pieces of jewelry. A real, tangible treasure. Ethan fell to his knees, not in covetous glee, but in overwhelming, humble gratitude. He clasped his hands together and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, you never left me, even when I thought I was alone." True to his character, Ethan did not keep the fortune for himself. He used it to buy back his father's land and more. He rebuilt their home, not as a small clay hut but as a sturdy, welcoming farmhouse. He hired villagers to help him cultivate the now expansive fields, providing work for the very people who had once shunned him. He fulfilled his lifelong dream, establishing a granary that was always open to the poor and hungry. And through it all, Bruno was always by his side, a graying but ever-loyal companion. From that day on, the story of the faithful farmer became a legend in the valley. The villagers would look upon Ethan's thriving farm and say that God truly rewards the humble and the steadfast, and that the greatest treasure a person can ever possess is not found in a hidden chest, but in a heart that never, ever loses its faith.